Hello, my loves. Oh my goodness, I am so excited to be chatting with you guys today and giving you an update on my personal project. I'll be spilling all the tea on what's been keeping me busy lately. But also, there's something I've been thinking about a lot because of this project, and that's just this idea of creating the things we wish existed in the world. So, us as creative people, we tend to feel deeply, and we also tend to love deeply as well. So, I can be such a fangirl. Like, when I love something, I just get so excited about it and pour myself into it. And then that sometimes, depending on what it is, or especially when it's related to like art and creativity, I start getting curious. I start seeing certain things where I feel like, oh, it would be so nice if this was also there. And oh my gosh, it would be so cool if we could see this. And something that I've learned is those gaps that we see after diving into something we get super excited about, those gaps tend to be our creative assignments. So if you see something that you absolutely love, but you wish there was like more of it in a different way, then that tends to point to the fact that maybe it's your assigned role to be the one to fill that gap, because not everybody can see the gaps, right? Not everybody notices that, oh, you know what, this is missing, right? Because we all have our unique vantage points. And so I want to chat about that journey of when you feel like there's something inside of you that is asking to come out, and how we can navigate that, because it can be really scary and intimidating and challenging, but it can also be super fun and rewarding. So I'll be sharing everything that I have learned so far. So as we're chatting, I'm going to be illustrating the cover of my personal project. Don't worry, I'm going to tell you all about that. So get cozy, grab your favorite drink, draw along if you want to, and let's dive right in. So I want to start by telling you a little bit more about my storytelling journey so far. So I was that kid who absolutely loved stories since I could remember. I loved books and movies and TV shows, and I grew up on Roald Dahl books and Enid Blyton, and I remember just being so captivated by the illustrations as well. Like, they are still so ingrained in my mind. But I also loved Harry Potter and movies like A Cinderella Story, shows like As Told by Ginger. I loved immersing myself in the lives of characters and relating to them. I think I've always been sort of like a highly empathic person, and I've been curious about how other people experience life and how I could connect to their emotions. So that's something that's always kind of been a part of me. So one thing about me is I've always known that I was going to be an artist someday. But at the time, I thought being an artist meant, painting still lifes and, that typical guy on the street of Paris type image. And I was like, oh yeah, that's what artists do. They paint landscapes and portraits, and like that's about it. And so obviously I was in an environment that made me feel like that is ridiculous, and if you do that, you're going to be poor. So I was like, let me pursue the practical path, and I went to law school. And then in 2019, I got admitted into the Malawian bar. But y'all, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And so in 2020, I decided that I was just going to pursue my dream of being an artist and really figure out what that is. And so I'd gotten introduced to children's book illustration in 2016. And so I was kind of doing that on the side and just really trying to figure that out. And that was sort of like my first introduction into visual storytelling and being able to tell a narrative with my art. And that really resonated with me. I was like, oh, wait, I can tell stories with my art. But the thing is, it didn't take long for me to realize that I wasn't actually passionate about telling children's stories. I think it's like incredible work, and some of my favorite artists are children's book illustrators, and I think it's such a beautiful craft. But for me personally, it just didn't light me up in the same way. And so I started really thinking about what I wanted to do and the kind of art that I wanted to create. And in 2020, there was an artist that really blew up, and his name is Sam Yang. He goes by Sam Does Arts. And there is something that he said in one of his videos that has always kind of stayed with me because it resonated so deeply. And he basically said that he wanted to create stories with his art, or rather tell stories with his art, without having his skills get in the way. So he was really an advocate of practicing and, creating and putting your work out there. And that resonated really deeply with me because I was like, oh yeah, that's something that I actually want to do. Like I want to tell stories with my work. But up until that point, I really didn't think that I could, or didn't really have the confidence in myself that I could tell stories or that I had anything interesting to share. But in 2014, no, not 2014, in 2024, I was feeling extremely creatively burnt out and unfulfilled. And so I just started leaning into the things that I was curious about and the things that sparked joy for me. So that was the year that I really told myself, like, if something is really interesting to you or you want to try something, we're not going to overthink it. We're just going to try it and see what happens. Like, that's it. That's all you got to do. So I think around May of that year, I got this ping to pull out a manuscript I had actually attempted to write back in 2017. So I discovered digital art in 2016, and I've kind of kept up the practice since then, more or less, with only just a few short breaks in between. But yeah, it's been a decade of me practicing and working on my digital illustration skills. But in 2017, I also discovered the wonderful world of AuthorTube and people writing novels and, things like that. And I was like, oh my God, that is so cool. I want to try that. So I tried writing a novel, and I got about 10,000 words in, which was about 4 chapters. And then I just quit. I just stopped. I was like, what? I don't even remember why or what specifically it was, but I just didn't do it. So in the back of my mind, I've always known, like, I have this like manuscript sitting on the dusty shelves of my Google Drive. And so I was like, you know what, let me just pull that out and have a read and just see what happens. So I was fully expecting myself to like have this be this super like, haha, let's just laugh at my younger me and my attempts, and I was expecting cringy writing and all that stuff. And yes, it wasn't the best writing as I was reading through it, but something interesting happened that really surprised me. I got to the part where the story sort of cut off just out of nowhere in the middle of a scene, and I had this reaction where I was like almost genuinely upset with the author because I felt like I had been left hanging, because I was actually getting into the story and I was getting invested in the characters and I wanted to know what happened. And that was a really interesting experience for me because it was like the first time that I actually saw I could create something that I myself was genuinely interested in and that I enjoyed, even if it wasn't like this perfect thing. I still really enjoyed going through the work and reading it. And it's the same thing like when I look back on my older art, I really, really appreciate it. And I really almost have that perspective where I can see so clearly the essence of what I was trying to do and what I was trying to capture. And I just have this appreciation for it. And so that really prompted me to lean into storytelling more. So another thing about me is that I've been obsessed with Korean dramas since 2012. Like, seriously, I absolutely love them. And I really love the way they tell their stories. They always leave me feeling so like warm and connected to the characters and almost like believing in humanity again. Like, oh, there is goodness in this world. I just love them. And one of the things I love about them was just the way that they're able to infuse their culture into everything. So they're so modern and technologically advanced, but at the same time, really connected to their culture and their roots. It weaves into all their storytelling. And I was really captivated by that. And I started getting curious. I was like, oh, okay. Is it possible for me to capture that feeling almost, sort of that like lightning in a bottle, and transmute that into the art and illustrations that I make, but also the stories that I tell? So after reading my attempt at writing a novel, I was like, you know what, I want to try this again. So I really started thinking, like, is there something that can make me feel the way Korean dramas make me feel, but also in a setting that is inspired by my own cultures and my own personal life experiences and influences? So that is what leads me to my current project. Okay, so let's chat about the project. I'm so excited. So essentially, I feel like this project combines my love for novels as well as my love for illustration. And at the core, it has storytelling as the foundation. So really trying to figure out how to tell a compelling how to tell a compelling story through prose, but also how to tell a compelling story visually. And I just love the juxtaposition of those two things, where essentially when you're writing, you're trying to paint pictures with only words. But then when you're painting or creating an illustration, you're trying to tell a full story without any words, unless you're doing comics or, a graphic novel. But for me specifically, I love illustration, just those standalone images where you scroll past it. You don't scroll past it, but it makes you stop mid-scroll and you're like, whoa, what is going on here? And it makes you curious. And so that is something that I was thinking about, like, oh, how do I combine that? And I feel like this project has given me the opportunity to explore that. So essentially, in the last two videos, I had introduced you to two characters, and I told you that they were for my novella that I was working on. That project has evolved since then into this giant world building project that could potentially span the rest of my life to complete. I don't think I'll ever be done, actually, because this world that I'm essentially building, I can feel that there are so many stories contained within them that I don't think I'll be able to tell all of them within my lifespan. And that's kind of sad, but it's also really exciting for me because it feels like my life's work, like work that I can spend literally the rest of my life doing. And that's something that I spent a lot of my life searching for. I'm not the type of person who just wanted to work for work's sake, but I wanted to feel meaningful and purposeful. And with this project, I feel I actually accidentally stumbled onto that. So essentially, just backtrack a little bit. Once I gave myself the permission to explore writing a novel again, after reading my previous ones, I was like, okay, let me start simpler and let me just start with a short story. So it started as a simple short story where the whole intention was to teach myself how to write, because, when you're trying a new creative venture, you do the things that most people tend to do, and that's just like pull up all the videos and all the resources, and you try to learn about the craft from reading books and watching videos. Not a terrible thing, but eventually I realized that the only way I'm going to actually learn how to write is by writing. So I needed something that could help me to figure out what my process is, how I personally liked to approach things. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do a short story. And then after I finished the short story, I realized there was more to it. And so it expanded into the novella. And then the novella turned into this prequel to like this book series of like interconnected standalone stories. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is much bigger than I initially thought that it was. But essentially, I realized that these stories that started coming to me could now be the foundation for the type of illustrations that I create. Because something else I realized is that, again, I kind of mentioned this, but I'm really captivated by characters, and that's the thing that I love to explore and create. And so I was like, okay, my stories are going to be very heavily character driven, but also so is my art. So I get to really think about, like, when I write a story or I explore a character, and I then get to think about how I can portray them visually through, like, you know, a portrait or a specific scene. So I loved that this project could essentially feed into each other, because sometimes I'll just sketch something out or sketch a particular element, especially when it comes to like the character features. I would like draw them and then I'll be like, oh, that's what they look like. And then I'd sort of write that in. And so it's really fun because it feels like everything is feeding into each other. So let me start by telling you a little bit about the world itself. So essentially, the stories are set on this fictional African island called Kamo. And if it existed in our modern world, it would be located somewhere off the southeast coast of Africa. So like close to Tanzania and just sort of above Madagascar, somewhere there in the Indian Ocean. And so that's where I envision like this island would be. So this island has been heavily influenced by, you know, Bantu cultures and Bantu cosmology, because it's really drawing from my own experience as a Malawian, and really thinking about like, okay, how can I create an island that could sort of naturally fit into the Bantu family of like cultures. And it was really fun inventing a whole island, because then I got to study a whole bunch of different cultures and see what the golden threads are. Like, it's so cool, like how the Bantu people are basically like a family of like ethnic groups that have sort of like this common thread between them. And so a lot of Bantu speaking tribes tend to share similarities in language and, you know, all that stuff. So it was really fun getting to explore what that was. And I'm still exploring every single day and extending that onto my imagination and thinking like, okay, how could I create a world that would fit seamlessly into this sort of cultural landscape? Okay, so about this story and illustration in particular, it's basically the cover of like the first book in the series, and it follows Sumindwa, who is the great-granddaughter of the nation's founding father, and Maru, he's like the youngest son of the wealthiest family on the island. And so this would be this specific island's version of chaebols in Korea. So yeah, super rich for like no reason. I'm kidding, there's a reason. So essentially, these two meet during a storm on one of the worst nights of their lives. And she's just lost her family home that meant so much to her, and is carrying a deep grief inside of her that she doesn't let others fully see. She's totally little miss, I'm fine, I'm okay, don't worry about me, and let me make sure you're taken care of first. And now for him, he is leaving the country to head the family business's expansion into the global market. But really, it's more like a functional exile disguised as a promotion, because there's some birth secret stuff going on with him, and he gets stranded on his way to the airport And so she finds him and ends up taking him in as her last guest because they had converted their family home into a guest house, which she was running. But she's had to close that down now. So she ends up taking him in as her last guest. And now they have to spend the rest of the evening together, working very hard to keep their growing attraction to each other under wraps and to keep things, strictly professional. Yeah, let's wish them luck, everybody. The series as a whole is called Lovers and Friends because it's essentially going to follow Sumindwa and, a group of her closest friends and each of their journeys towards, finding love. And so, yeah, it's going to be a series of like interconnected standalones, like I mentioned. So each story can be read on its own, essentially. But I also have designed it in a way that there's sort of like this flow where the most satisfying reading experience will be like if you read them in order, because you get cameos and all these different things. But technically, they will be able to be read like on their own. And so the vibes I was going for here is kind of like the sitcom Friends, merged with Hospital Playlist, the Korean drama, because I'm currently rewatching it now for like the millionth time. So I'm just like, yay, these are the vibes that I'm kind of going for. But I'm not strictly trying to put my stories into clear comps because I feel like they don't really have those clear comps. I'm just drawing from all the different stories that I've loved over the years and just putting all these different elements together. So it's hard to like pick those strong comparative titles. I'm just kind of really leaning more so into how I want the stories to feel, the kind of emotional impact that I want to have, because I feel like that's what Korean dramas do very well. They're really, really good at creating these distinct emotional moments that, kind of make you reflect on life and things like that, but they also make you feel warm inside. So I'm more so focused on the vibes overall than like making stories feel specifically like other ones. I still want the stories to feel unique to the island. So that's a very interesting challenge that I'm still working on and trying to figure out. So in terms of the format and, how I'm planning to share these stories, initially I had planned to self-publish this series, but I found myself getting into a place where I was overthinking a lot and moving really, really slowly and not making the kind of progress on the stories that I wanted. I kept backtracking, doing a lot of overthinking. So I was like, this isn't really working. And then I discovered serial novels that are being published on Substack. And I got into reading a couple of them and I totally loved them. Like, there was something about, coming back every single week and, you're getting a new chapter, and I was really, really enjoying it. But something that I noticed is publishing on Substack, for the authors that I found, it felt like there was almost this low stakes, low pressure mentality. And so it felt like the authors weren't trying to be perfect. They were just more focused on getting the story out there and letting it find the readers that it's meant for. And I could also feel like the authors were having a bit more fun. So I was like, oh my gosh, you know what? Maybe let me try that. And it took a while for me to kind of detach from my gung-ho determination to like self-publish this series. But once I did, immediately I felt a little bit freer and lighter because I knew it didn't have to be perfect. Because I knew the stories that I enjoyed the most, they had like, typos and like grammatical stuff, but did not bother me at all. Like, if you had a good character that I wanted to follow and was invested in, I was fine. Like, I was happy to take that journey with them. So I think there's that kind of like expectation where, we're not expecting perfection from, I think, stories that are published in this serial sort of format. And I think it's just such a great way to put your work out there and connect with the people who would enjoy it. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to give that a try. I feel like it would be great for eventually building a readership and fan base for my stories, because at this point, I'm literally just the only one in the fandom. And so it would be nice to connect with other people who would also enjoy these stories. I decided to sort of set this interesting little personal challenge for myself, and I want each story to sort of have 16 chapters with a nod to the traditional K-drama format, and then have a bonus chapter that could act sort of like as an epilogue. And so that kind of creates these constraints that I can work within in order to reduce the decisions I need to make in terms of like, okay, what format am I going to use? I'm even considering using the same sort of like POV tense throughout. But it's more so to create constraints that will free my mind up to focus on the more creative aspects, which is really the story in and of itself. So creativity really does thrive off of constraints, but I also want to make sure I'm giving myself enough flexibility that is, I feel pulled or called to change something, I can do that. And that's why I think publishing as a serial on Substack is really good for that, because I get to test this out and see, can I really do it? Is it going to work? And do I even like creating in this way? But so far I've been having fun. So far it's been fun. So I'm really enjoying that little creative challenge. Now, my intention is to be able to publish 2 chapters a week, and I am yet to meet that goal. But that's okay. That's okay. I just feel like when you're starting something new, especially, we can set these goals and like, okay, I want to be able to do this. But in the beginning, because there's still so much that you're learning, I feel like a lot of the work is really just going into figuring things out. And so I'll keep aiming and setting my intention to be able to publish 2 chapters a week. But I'm also not going to be hard on myself when, I can't do that. I really wanted to be able to have like this backlog, ready so that, I can publish consistently. But I didn't even have the margin in my life with the way things are going on, like behind the scenes, to even create a backlog. That's something that I think people don't talk about. They're like, oh, you should just have like 8 episodes, done and ahead of time. And I'm like, whoa, you need time and energy in order to even do that. So right now my life doesn't even allow for that kind of margin, so I couldn't build the kind of backlog that I wanted. But I keep aiming to work towards that, to be able to publish on a consistent schedule and then eventually build a backlog. But the most important thing is to do the work of the writing and the creating and the publishing, because I've already seen that as I do that, I'm slowly getting better and I'm slowly getting faster. And the faster that I get, then, the more that I can create. So that's just something that I'm also figuring out. But when it comes to overall how I'm approaching this project and the way that I'm creating it, I'm like, okay, this is new. I don't have an exact template and reference that I can turn to. So this format of publishing serials is not new. Arthur Conan Doyle, if that's how you say his name, the author of Sherlock Holmes, he actually published some of Sherlock Holmes's stories as serials in a magazine. So he'd publish monthly, and he really built a huge readership doing that. So it's not like a new format, and I feel like it's starting to get a little bit more popular nowadays as well. But I feel like the exact vision that I have for my project, I don't have quite a specific reference that I can turn to, So I'm kind of having to figure this out on my own. And that kind of leads me to the main thing that I wanted to chat with you guys about. And that's this idea of really creating the things you want to see in the world in the way that you want to create them. Okay, so I think the first thing that we need to consider here when we're looking to create something that lights us up on the inside and brings us joy is, instead of focusing on originality, focus on curiosity. So what I mean by that is basically instead of trying to actively create something that maybe has never been seen or never been done before, maybe you have an idea and you're like, oh, but maybe this is too common and, everybody has done this or everybody's already spoken on this. But then you still see this gap, like you're like, oh, but nobody has said it quite like this before, or I haven't really seen somebody do this before. So there's an element within what you've already seen done before that you're like, but this thing is missing. But you could still be hit up with, the same worries of like, oh, but it's still super common to talk about this, or maybe even this fear of like, okay, is it too niche or is it too specific? The thing that I think is important is to take off the pressure of trying to be original and really just lean in more heavily into what you're curious about and what is interesting to you. Because as a human being, there is literally nothing original about that. Like, there are like 8 billion of us on this planet, and yet each person is so unique, never been seen before, never been done before, and will never get to experience again. So you're like a once in a lifetime event. And so you don't need to try to be like super original. And you don't even need to worry if you are too niche. You just need to focus on the things that, you're curious about and how you can bring more of that out. And so you can ask yourself questions like, what sparks joy for you? What makes you go, like stop in your tracks and be like, that's interesting. What are the things that you tend to notice? What does your attention naturally linger on? What are the kind of things that trigger strong emotional reactions to you? Basically, you just want to become a student of your own experience, to take note of the things that really capture your attention, and to start theorizing about why something really did make you stop and go, like to lean in and to be curious about it. And also notice where you see patterns like, oh, I tend to be drawn to this particular kind of thing, or this particular type of experience, this particular type of person. Really just start getting curious about what it's like to be you, because that's going to be the foundation of what you're trying to create and bring through in this world. And that's going to be the thing that's going to allow you to bring it into this world in a way that only you can. The next thing to understand is that what you desire to create, someone out there has a desire to experience. So for me personally, all the things I love, and leaning into specifically Korean dramas, for example, a lot of the times I'll find myself saying, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that they made this. I feel like they were making it for me. I enjoyed it so much, So there are a lot of people out there asking for things that they don't even have any idea that they are asking for until they actually encounter them. And then they have that kind of like, oh my God, I didn't even know I needed this. But I'm so glad I found it, if you've had that experience. And so your art and your creations will be that for someone out there, that when they see it, when they experience it, when they encounter it, they're gonna go, wow, I didn't know I needed this, but I'm so glad I got to experience this. And that's why they call it a calling, essentially, because your desire to create something mirrors somebody else's desire to experience your creation. Now, this can be hard to believe for a lot of us, especially if you've been surrounded by people that made you feel like you didn't have anything valuable to offer. Your young mind may have concluded that, okay, absolutely nobody is going to care about what I have to say or what I have to share, because nobody in my life has cared about it so far, or paid it any attention, or treated it like it's important. And so that gets ingrained in us. But I've learned that that's actually not true. All that means is that the people surrounding you aren't the people you're here to impact with your art, and that's okay. The people that you are here to impact are out there, and you are absolutely not alone. If you enjoy something, if something lights you up, there is somebody out there who will also enjoy and be lit up by those same things. And so there are also people who would love your work and share in your joy. And you give yourself the best chances of finding those people when you lean into the things that you want to create and the things you wish existed, and make them in the way that you want to, even if it doesn't make sense initially or it doesn't come out the way you envisioned to, but you still have the courage to create them and share them anyway. Third thing that has really helped me as well is making it safe to feel the uncomfy feelings that come with creating from the heart. Because that's what we're really doing here. We are creating from a deeper, more authentic place. And when you do that, that's going to trigger all the feels. It's going to trigger uncertainty, fear, vulnerability, probably cringe and silliness. Like, what am I even doing? You're going to have self-doubt. Like, all of that stuff is going to come up, especially if it's something you genuinely deeply care about. So learning how to make those uncomfortable feelings safe to feel within yourself means you stop shaming yourself for feeling that way or treating yourself like there's something wrong with you whenever doubt or uncertainty or any of that kind of pops up. And you just embrace it and allow it as part of the creation experience, because it truly is. So I know a lot of us really struggle with like having a harsh inner critic, but that harsh inner critic and that super critical voice has a role and a job, and it's not there to make things harder for yourself. It's there to protect you from being hurt, because like I said, creating can be a very vulnerable thing. And if you grew up in an environment where you were shamed for your self-expression, then this critical voice steps in order to sort of stop you from experiencing that shame again. So it almost like developed a strategy where it felt like, if I can, make you feel bad now, it's going to prevent worse negative feelings later on down the line. I know it's not a very effective strategy long term, which is why we really need to sort of re-educate this part of ourselves and step into the role of being our biggest support system and biggest encourager, so that we can start releasing this fear that we have that, oh my goodness, like, what if, people are going to say negative things about me? How is my work going to be received? And more importantly, what is that going to say about me? When you simply embrace the experience and you allow the uncomfortable, negative emotions to sort of be there, then you stop resisting your work at two layers. Because a lot of us, we're not just resisting the work itself, right? Sometimes we can be like, we put off creating, or we don't want to do it. It feels too hard. So we resist the work itself, but then we also we start having feelings about the experiences that we're having creating the work, and then we start resisting those emotional experiences as well. So we don't want to feel the doubt, we don't want to feel cringy, we don't want to feel like we're going to look silly and embarrass ourselves. And so we're resisting the emotion, and we're also resisting the work, and that is what creates a lot of suffering for creative people. So in those moments when those uncomfy feelings arise, if we can learn to hold our beautiful inner artist child by the hand and just say, you know what, no matter what shows up today, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere, and I'm so excited to see what you're going to create today. And no matter how it comes out, I'm so proud of you for showing up. That allows us to become the inner voice of support and encouragement that we desperately needed. And that's going to be the things where we find ourselves relaxing a little bit around our creations and just showing up, allowing ourselves to be more playful and more experimental, putting less pressure on the outcomes. And as we do that, that allows us to show up more consistently. And when we can show up more consistently and share our work more consistently, that gives us the best chances of finding the people that are going to encounter our work and go, oh my gosh, I am so glad I found this. I am so glad this exists. And another thing I found about this is when we allow ourselves to be okay with experiencing the negative emotions, it also expands our capacity to be with those uncomfortable positive emotions. Because I don't know about you, but feeling genuinely happy about my work or excited about my characters and joyful about what I'm doing is actually also really uncomfortable. When I read a chapter and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that, let me read it again. Or when I'm creating an illustration and I've just finished it and now I'm like staring at it like it's my kid and it's like sleeping in the cot and I'm just like, oh my gosh, look at it, it's so cute. That sense of enjoyment in what I have just made is actually really uncomfortable. It feels awkward, like, you know? I don't know, maybe I've noticed like for artists, it feels like a lot of us tend to lean towards like self-deprecation and being like, my work is trash and ha ha ha, no, don't look at it, no, it's silly, you know, super deflecting compliments and putting all of that off. Because I don't know, it just also feels super vulnerable to say, hey, look what I made, and you know what, I really like it, and I hope you're gonna like it too. But again, so expanding our tolerance to feel and experience the full spectrum of, you know, our human emotions has allowed me to really be able to sit with the joy and the excitement of creating work that I would love to see, and without making that mean I'm being self-indulgent and selfish and self-centered, because that's totally not what it means. You're allowed to enjoy the things that you create. Revolutionary, I know. So to just bring this all together, if you've ever had something, you know, stir inside of you and you have that little, oh gosh, I wish this thing existed, I'm going to really encourage you to lean into that and start taking tiny little steps towards figuring out how you can bring that into the world, because that's going to be such a gift, not only to you, but to the rest of us who are waiting to experience what you have to create. We just don't know it yet, but when we see it, we're going to be like, oh my God, yes, I'm so glad that this exists. So it matters, like whatever is on your heart to create, it truly, truly matters. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. That's all I had to share. I realize now, as you know, I'm getting to the end of this, that I didn't really talk about, you know, the process of like creating the illustration in and of itself. And I think like that's okay. Overall, it was really challenging, and many times, again, those uncomfy feelings were like coming up, like, oh my God, it's not coming out right, and like that. But I just kind of kept going. I've been doing this practice of just trying to make it okay to feel the uncomfortable feelings. But in the end, I'm really happy with how the cover for my first book came out. And so if you're interested in reading Sumi and Maru's story, then you can do that by heading over to my Substack. It'll be linked in the description below. The first 2 chapters are already up. I'm working through chapters 3 and 4, and hopefully they're gonna be up really soon as well. I also have a short story on there. And I just loved writing this short story, and I plan to write even more, because I found that writing short stories is actually my favorite way to world build. So if there's a corner of Kamo that I'm like really curious about, that I'm like, oh, you know what's like over here, I'm just gonna write a short story about it. I'm not one to just sit out and fill out this like world building Bible in like super detail. I just love discovering snippets of the world in the context of story, and then I'll put a note of it somewhere. But I'm really enjoying writing these short stories, and sometimes a character in the main stories that I'm working on is gonna jump out at me, and I get curious about their story, and so I am just having a lot of fun with this project. So if you'd like to follow along, I'd really love to have you there and join me on this journey. And yeah, I'm also encouraging you on your own path and wishing you all the best with whatever creative adventure is on your heart to explore. So we're all in this together. We're all in this together, and we're just going to figure it out one step at a time. So I'm cheering you on. Thanks again for being here, and we'll chat soon. Bye for now.